Exceptional Talent Tier 1 visa, the King of the UK visas, the Royal Charter of the English immigration system, the Crown of the Home Office work permits. A credit-sized biometric ID that gives you the right to work whenever you want, wherever you want to, within Great Britain, and an opportunity to settle just after 3 years. For comparison, you can settle only after 10 years if you're an ordinary employee. To get the visa, you need to get endorsed from either the Royal Society, the Royal Academy of Engineering, the Arts Council England, the British Society, TechNation. You might have heard of some of the first 4 bodies. 2 of them have the word royal in them, which means they received the Royal Charter. In fact, there is also a society that received the Royal Charter. It is called the British Computer Society, BCS. However, it's not them doing the endorsements, but some mostly unknown private company consisting purely of managers without computer science education. And you will understand why by the end of this video. To begin, let's review a bit of English history, shall we? In particular, the times of guilds. The guilds were medieval institutes which had to be joined by members of any profession other than agriculture. If you're your own employer, like a blacksmith, you had to join Smith's Guild, which was like a trade union that ensured that all its members accept the laws of the craft. In modern terms, the guilds were the chartered bodies for regulated professions, and in fact, most of them received the Royal Charter. Each person worked in her own shop using her own tools, and the whole profit went to herself. She was a master of her work. The term master meant something different from boss, which today simply means master of the workman. The highest grade in the guild system was a master, and it meant a mastery of the business. To use another term from the same epoch, all the medieval bosses were masters of arts. The other grades were the journeyman and the apprentice, but these were just grades through which anyone could pass, not social classes or castes, just degrees. That's why an apprentice could marry a master's daughter, and the latter would not have died of aristocratic indignation. This is because meaning of family was rather different. The time frame that we're looking at is 1200 to 1700, and the society was much different then. These were pre-Enlightenment times, and the concept of individualism did not exist yet. The society was formed around small communities, like parishes when it comes to religion, or guilds when it comes to professional work. The guilds were powerful and rich, and their purpose was to resist inequality. For example, for the Worshipful Company of Bricklayers, it was to ensure not only that bricklaying should survive and succeed, but that every bricklayer should survive and succeed. It sought to rebuild the ruins of any bricklayer, to strengthen the weakest link, and to go after the 100th sheep. In short, to keep the row of little shops unbroken, like a line of battle. It resisted the growth of a big shop like the growth of a dragon. As you might imagine, the old guild type has been completely destroyed, and today, what remains of the Worshipful Company of Bricklayers is a bunch of city firms that are run by capitalists who operate charities, but who are not bricklayers themselves or have ever known a single bricklayer. Generally, the individual find livelihood, patronage, security, and intellectual and moral satisfactions in the collectives that was strong enough to answer all his needs, but limited enough not to make him feel submerged or lost. They suffice to satisfy the average man who does not try to gratify imaginary needs if his position is fairly stable, who opposes innovation if he lives in a balanced milieu even though he is poor. Now, by 1700 everything changes. These natural social groups begin to disappear, together with social taboos. Let's look at the taboos first. There are 2 large categories of the taboos in England, those resulting from Christianity and social-logical taboos. Christianity stated that the natural order is not to be tampered with, and anything new appearing in the world must be scrutinized by moral judgment with a negative outcome. The social-logical taboos involve the conviction that a natural hierarchy exists and that nothing can override it. The king was on the top of this hierarchy, followed by nobility and the clergy, and this structure of society was considered sacred and recognized and relied upon by everyone as the only possible. It is the belief in this natural and sacred order that was preventing any technical development from kicking off. As to the natural groups, families were closely organized, and groups formed by collective interests, such as the university, the parliament, and hospitals, were independent. Such division allows to keep certain methods and inside tricks a trade within the group, and stays in the way of propagation of technical innovations. The illustration of this obstacle is that guilds were regional and not national institutes, and there could be more than one guild of a kind. At least 35 years after Abraham Darby had successfully burnt coke in his iron-melting blast furnace, other English smiths still believed that only wood can be used. Another example on the international scale is that Frenchmen first melted glass in coal furnace only 100 years after Englishmen have done so, despite the nations being separated by only a short distance. This was the era of personal skill and craftsmanship, which was replaced to impersonal machine processes. The natural groups and the taboos disappeared at the time of the French Revolution in 1789 by systematic campaigns against them under the guise of a defense of the rights of the individual. The importance of the family as a unit was undermined. The society began to be atomized more and more and glorified the vision of the individual. A whole new environment of crowded cities emerged, consisting of men uprooted from rural districts, and thus having no family or any social group to belong to who would protect them against soulless technological machine concerned only with mechanization and profit. This is also the world that we live in today. For sure, there were some techniques prior to the 18th century for production of goods and weapons. However, the activities were not technical as such. It was mainly the pleasure of expressing oneself through one's craft or of getting together that was central. George Homans, the founder of behavioral psychology, reports, "Formerly, when a New England family convoked a meeting for working in common, it was for all concerned one of the most pleasurable times of the year. The work was scarcely more than a pretext for coming together. The techniques employed in work were secondary to human interactions and social relations. People saw work more as a punishment and not as a virtue, tried to work as little as possible, and dedicated their time to leisure or sleep, conversation, games, and meditation, rather than consumption of goods that characterizes our modern society. Moreover, when using tools, man exploited them to the limit in application of his craft and took care not to create new tools just for the sake of extending that technological possibility. His mindset was not directed towards coming up with as much new technology as possible as a scientific exercise, but his needs were rather constant and stable. Instead, he focused on application of old means and perfected his own skill through their application. If the tool was not sufficient for achieving his goal, its deficiency was compensated by the imagination of the worker. Professional know-how and the expert eye were what really counted. Man's talents could make his crude tools yield the maximum efficiency. This mindset prevailed until the 18th century, and the accent was on the human being in charge of her tools and not on the tools. The differences in people's talent, skill level, and deeper spiritual meaning that they expressed in their work gave variability to their produce according to personal gifts of their creator. Today, we have sophisticated tools to make perfect finished products, but the pursuit of the real skill is abundant and the room for variability is little. Technology was also local, as the social groups were strong and close to outsiders. They incorporated techniques into their crafts, which bore distinct character, so that their techniques were subjective in relation to their culture rather than objective. There was no one universal best way to achieving something, but instead, each landscape enjoyed produce of its own character, which we can find in the tools and arms that peoples created. As we have discovered artifacts of that time in form of the rudest sticks and stools and pots and pans, which have suggestive shapes as if they possessed not by devils but elves. for they were indeed, as compared with subsequent systems, produced in the incredible fairyland of a free country. Since the widespread of technology was not permitted as already shown, its evolution was slowed and matched against that of man himself. The crucial point is that it was men who were in control of the use of techniques and their influence, and who subordinated techniques to the framework of their life and culture, instead of having to adapt to them, like we have to in modern times. Technique was not allowed to influence the moral and psychic evolution of men, but facilitated individual progress, providing means for the expression of its master. Such was the past which was going past in the 18th century. The first factor that we looked at was destruction of natural groups and morals and hierarchies which went full steam in England and France. In other countries of the world, such as Germany or Russia, this was not the case. In fact, the Enlightenment, which was met with enthusiasm, was criticized by no one else but Immanuel Kant in his Critique of Pure Reason, 1781. He saw what trouble religion was in and understood it could not withstand the argumentation of reason. However, instead of dismissing the existence of God due to logical assignments, he claimed that we have to decide which one should choose. And he chose religion. I here therefore found it necessary to deny knowledge in order to make room for faith. Agree or not, but for European people in 18th century, the step from a moral Christian organization of society was like a contact with extraterrestrial beings would mean for us today, a complete shake-up. The second factor is the technical intention, i.e., the will to exploit those changes in the world. At the beginning of 19th century, the bourgeois saw the possibility to take advantage of the technical advancements to draw huge profits from them. With the morals and religion crumbling down, they felt free to exploit the individual for their financial gain. For example, in 1770s, James Watt found a way to improve the efficiency of existing Newcomen steam engine, but had to go into partnership with the capitalist Matthew Boulton, who grasped the industrial possibilities of the engine. It was in England that industrialization first happened and gained traction, but it is precisely because capitalism was more highly developed there.